All right, guys, I have a novelty here on Baitman Raw. This guy isn't a professional fisherman. He's not a YouTuber, but he is a good friend of mine that I've known for a long time. And we've only met in person one time, and that was actually last year at the Bassmaster Classic in Knoxville. And I was very jealous because he and his wife got a tour of the football facility. And as much as I love the Vols, when he sent me a messages of that, I was pretty disappointed. I should have knew better when he was like, "Hey, meet back with me in like 5 minutes." I think it might have been foreshadowing something, but his name is Pete Robbins, and Pete is well known in the industry as an opinionated guy. He tells you the truth, good, bad, or ugly. But he's also involved in Anglers in International, and what they do is put you on the biggest bass that Mexico has to offer. It's a deal. His wife, Hannah Robbins, she helps a lot with that, and he goes about twice a year. And I get really pissed off seeing all the photos of these giant bass they're catching, and especially on 10XD, which he recently did. So, Pete, welcome to Baitman Raw.
Thank you, Kevin. It's good to be here. Like you said, we've only met a few times in person, but we've worked together for, I want to say since 2007, 2008, something like that, on all sorts of projects.
Yeah,
So I
so
feel like I know you well.
yeah, and basically what I did was I wrote scripts for TV shows, classic patterns. That was the first one we worked with, and then we did Lost Lake, and then some hunting shows. So I would write these scripts, the intros, the outros, what Robbie Floyd or whatever announcer was going to say, email them to Pete, and he'd kind of be like, "This is really good, but it's really redneck, so we got to fix the English on there so the viewers understand." And he did a great job.
I was good at the fishing ones, I think, because I can come up with 12 different ways to say the name for a big bass. When we did hunting shows, because I don't hunt much, I had a little more trouble coming up with 12 different ways to describe a buck, but I think between us we did okay.
Yeah, yeah, and shout out to Mike Otten, who I reached out to the other day, and Mike's going to come in and do a Baitman Raw. So I'm very interested in that because Mike's just kind of really distanced himself away from the professional aspect of fishing. So uh, give a lot of credit to Mike for a lot of the things I've done over the last few years. So Pete, pretty big week. First tournament of the year, there was the Bassmaster Opens. And I know you're a bass guy, and there's nothing wrong with that. One thing I noticed out of all these guys that made all these announcements, how they're going to bass and everything, a lot of them got mathematically eliminated the very first tournament.
I think that's right. Although, there's special dispensation for guys who are fishing all eight opens. And I think there are about 30 or 40 of them who are signed up for all eight. So just because you finished 152nd, technically you're not out of it, although it seems in all likelihood that you will be. But they are going to give those guys a special opportunity and they're competing against a much smaller field. But yes, I mean, a lot of guys I think came over and thought that the opens were going to be an easy path to the elites. And clearly, that's not the case. Scott Martin came in and he did what people expected him to do, but lots of other guys got pretty humbled, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think Scott Martin's a hammer, and I figured he would qualify, if not to the first set. I think what you're talking about is the double down division, correct?
Right.
And I fully expected Scott to qualify. He's a great fisherman, thinks outside the box, but he has a lot of experience through the years. And it was pretty much his own choosing to stay with FLW for so long. But, you know, one thing I've been talking about is there were a lot of guys in that top 20 I'd never heard of. And you kind of knew going into it, there was going to be guys you never heard of take some of those qualification spots. But it is just the first tournament.
I mean, there's so many guys out there who are so good across the country and we don't know about them. You look at Brian New, I didn't know who he was. And I was talking to someone today, and they're like, man, everyone knows who Brian New is. They're like, I think they call him Little Thrift or Baby Thrift or something like that. They said he's going to come in and he's going to kick ass wherever he goes, whether it's as a co-angler or out of the front of the boat on any tour. So kind of like with the elites last year, guys like Drew Cook and Patrick Walters, most of us didn't know who they were. There are a lot of good people who, given the opportunity, will do well. And a lot of guys who've been around for decades and can get checks, but aren't necessarily tournament winners, who are going to get pretty humbled along the way, who are going to think they're going to come in and be the big swinging dick from day one, and they're going to get squashed.
Yeah. and that's not saying anything wrong about their abilities or anything. And I'm not saying, well, you should just go ahead and quit, because anything can happen. These guys are good enough, most of them, to turn around. They could rattle off 2 top 5s in a row.
Right.
But then you got the Jason Christie's, not the Jason Christie with the Y. He's just kind of swimming out there.
Well, what do you think? I know there were 3 or 4 guys from the BPT, Jason Christie from Oklahoma, Bobby Lane, a couple others who came and fished the Opens. Do you have any insight into why they're fishing the Opens, whether it's they want to come back or they just want to sort of tune up for the start of the season?
Well, I personally don't know, and I'll look at it like this. Fishing is a business, whether it's you're jumping from bass to MLF or FLW to bass, or one of the 3 you choose. Why not give yourself an option at the end of the year? Let's say Jason Christie qualifies to make the Elite Series, and then he gets to make that decision, and he has an awesome year on MLF. He's kind of in a win-win situation. He goes, well, I finished 3rd in points in MLF, and I won $60,000-$70,000 here. And I've also qualified, for the Elite Series. So I'm in a good spot. I'm not going to go wrong. To have the opportunity to do that, I think is really good. Where I'm worried is the guys that, well, screw FLW, MLF. They're the worst organization ever. I'm going to bass. I'm going to go fish the Elite Series. And then, oops, I didn't even qualify. I didn't make the top 20 in points. Can I come back to FLW? I mean, if I'm FLW, I said, yeah, you got to fish the Strand Series or whatever they call it now, the FLW Series, to qualify.
I think that's right. I think there's a lot of guys who are sort of alpha males out there who want to burn bridges, want to say, I can do whatever I want. But then when push comes to shove, you kind of have to avoid burning bridges in this industry. Isn't it? As you know, it's an exceptionally small industry. It's easy to piss off the wrong person, and tomorrow that person's your boss or potentially your boss.
Yeah. I always said, don't, I've said it before now, damn, forget it.
Don't piss in the well.
Yeah, don't piss in the well. And I'll be honest, I've been, me, I've made a few people mad, but the people I make mad, I don't plan on working with anyway. So that's why I never make you mad, Pete. One day you may say you need me to write something for you. But I mean, there's a lot of fishing out there, and it's just now starting. I think FLW on Rayburn starts this week. Am I right?
This week, and they're going to crush them. I mean, I've talked to a couple guys who are down there practicing, and it's just going to be a matter of getting on the big fish. That's an amazing lake. I fished there in the late 90s and then never went back till about 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm amazed at how much better it is now than it was then. And it was a great lake then. I don't think they hit it exactly right in the FLW last year, but I would fully expect over 4 days there's a potential for 100 pounds pretty easily.
Yeah, and there's still some great fishermen over there on FLW fishing. But I will say, unless you're really following it, a lot of people don't even know they're fishing in, because everybody's so much MLF and so much bass that the FLW tours just kind of people's forgotten about. But I expect them to really catch them and put up some big weights.
Yeah, I looked down the list today, the FLW roster, and there are a lot of rookies over there, but there are some really good sticks. I mean, John Cox, who's fishing the elites, is fishing there. Brad Knight is there. Jeremy Lawyer is there. There are guys who can really catch them and could catch them on any tour. And that just happens to be where they are right now. So, I guess the question is, if you're over there and you do real well, do you move to BPT next year when you get the invitation? Do you stay where you are? I don't know. I mean, the future, I assume that BPT, MLF needs to keep FLW around as a feeder system. But I would be worried if I was a full-time pro fishing over there.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I'm worried if I'm a full-time employee over there. Their office is right here in my backyard. I did see they posted a job for a warehouse help. Not interested in that, but are they going to stay here forever? It's just a really crazy deal. But I think if they'll go back to the grassroots guy, because FLW was built on Operation Bass and the All-American and the Working Man Trail. And then, you had the FLW Tour come along, and mutual friend of ours, Mike Terry, won the first FLW tournament from Union City. Mike Terry's one of the best fisherman that was ever on Kentucky Lake. And he won that tournament and basically took that money and invested in hog farms and chicken farms. And he could go fish anywhere he wants right now. He don't have to rely on a derby to pay his bills, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, you make a good point, though, about the grassroots guy. I think BPT, MLF, they clearly have a lot of money. They have a lot of talent at the top. They have a lot of infrastructure now with FLW. They really have to make the most of that. We've seen guys like Travis Manson, who are representative of that grassroots angler to some extent, come out against them, some decisions they've made, and they have to be careful not to step on their own shoelaces all the time. They really need to cater to those guys and build up that grassroots supports, because it's the BFL level guys who buy boats every year. It's the BFL level guys who buy 300 rods 5 times a year. Those are your hardcore guys. And those are the guys who, if you're looking for endemic sponsorship, you really need to kowtow to them and make sure that they're happy and they're in your corner.
Yeah, because let's be honest, when you go to a tour level meeting, they're not doing raffle prizes for sponsor giveaways and stuff like that. But you go to a BFL tournament meeting, they've got used to have life jackets and bump boards and cases of oil and whatever sponsor prizes, and they'd raffle them off. And hey, I'll be honest, a lot of times I bought products because of that when I fished the BFLs, even though I never got a check. But just because you buy sponsor products does not guarantee you a good finish. I can tell you that.
As a reformed, non-successful tournament fisherman, I can tell you I bought a lot of sponsor products and I've never been successful.
Yeah, it's funny is, I do the YouTube thing and I've never claimed to be a great angler. And where I learned most of my stuff was sitting behind an editing desk, getting to break down all these pros on different lakes. And that, there's a lot of stuff I didn't put on TV that it was just too much, or it was, hey, Gerald calls and say, hey, that's really good. No, but I really don't know if I want that out there. Okay, no problem. I can still make you look good. And that's where I learned a lot of stuff. But YouTube is crazy, man. I think there's a huge disconnect between pro anglers that want to be YouTubers and YouTubers that kind of want to be pro anglers. And when they start mixing with each other, it's not jiving real well. So I do get a little tired of seeing the pro anglers beg and beg and beg for please subscribe. It really helped me out. And I just don't think they understand, dude, you're not going to get paid on subscribers. It's about the views. So you can have 1,000 subs if you're only getting 100 views a video. That's not doing anybody any good.
I think also there are guys who are made for YouTube, a Scott Martin or a Gerald Swindle. If that's not your jam, you shouldn't be doing it. I mean, yes, you need to get those impressions for your sponsor reports or whatever else. But like, you watch another angler who's not Gerald Swindle try to be Gerald, and it's just uncomfortable. It makes you feel like you need to take a shower almost. Everyone needs to be who they are, and you need to maximize your use of social media channels to the extent that you can. But when guys try to be funny who aren't funny, or they try to be teachers when they aren't teachers, you can improve upon those skills. But if that's not you, don't go down that path.
Yeah, that's a very good way of saying that. And I actually think one of the best guys is Brian Latimer. And that dude grinded. He just shot on a cell phone and finally got him a camera. But he has grown so much. But he's a good teacher, and he covers the tournament stuff, and he does it in a timely manner. And Scott's been really, really good at it, And I'll be honest, I think he helped blow the Guggen squad up pretty exclusively there for a little bit. He got them into a different audience and didn't know who they were. They already had the snowball rolling, but
he was
I think
also
Latimer's a good dude.
Early adopter. There's some value in being the first one on the format. You look at guys who figured out the Facebook deal or the Instagram deal early on. If you wait until everyone else is there and then you jump in, you're kind of screwed, or at least you're fighting an uphill battle at that point.
Yeah. So me as a content creator, I'll be honest. In the last 2 weeks, I'm starting a podcast. Got a podcast, and I'm a little late on that, but I'll be honest, I think I was one of the OGs when it come to clicking on a live button and streaming and talking about baits. And now everybody's doing, or companies are doing it. And I'm like, man, I used to do that, on my kitchen table. And it's crazy, but you can't expect for you to be the only one doing something. So what I'm doing, I'm looking at other avenues of what's next, what's nobody doing it. Maybe I can get on board.
I think that's right. I think that's right. I mean, for someone like me who doesn't have a lot of driving time day to day and certainly doesn't have a lot of time at the house, it's hard for me to sit down and listen to an hour or 2 hour podcast for the most part. So, like when people say you have to listen to what Kevin did this weekend or you have to listen to what Luke Duncan did, it takes me a while to be convinced that I'm going to do it. And then when you kind of get that little viral buzz going around about a particular episode, that's when I'm likely to download it and listen to it when I'm driving or when I have some time at home. But otherwise, I'm likely to miss out for months at a time.
Yeah. As much YouTube and stuff I watch, I'll be honest, I watch sometimes most of it just to see how many people contradict themselves and who's copying who and whatnot. There's just, unfortunately, it's the fishing industry. It's more than baits, man. People see a successful video and they got to make one just like it and all that. But I just try to do me. And but this isn't about me. This is about Pete.
Does it feel? I mean, I'll branch or I'll broach the controversy now. Does it feel to you like sometimes pro anglers are trying to generate controversy in their YouTube videos just for the sake of getting views? I
Yes,
mean, I saw
absolutely.
one recently with David Dudley, and David is obviously the all-time winningest angler in FLW outdoors history. He's a good teacher. He's a fantastic fisherman, but
Yep.
he did one on the Ned rig that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and he kept on using a lot of assumptions, and I was like, I almost felt like he was putting a joke on me, like he was trying to generate controversy as opposed to generating information.
Right. And so that's something you see in YouTube a lot, and I call that clickbait.
Right.
I could put on the title of this podcast, the most controversial guest I've ever had. People are going to click it, but I'm not going to do that. I've always said I'm never going to use clickbait as a negative. Now, I've made videos about Vexus boats, and the title was Best Bass Boat Ever Built. And that's what people are expecting out of Vexus. Is it? That's for you to make your opinion on. And then I kind of clickbaited the aluminum boat. Was this the best overall boat? A lot of people expected that. My opinion, if you got the money, Vex is probably the best boat on the market. If you don't, there's lots of good options out there.
I
Um,
got, I have a friend who just ordered a Vexus. He's a longtime Ranger fan, and the price tag came in fully rigged, $98,000. And I was like, man, how many boats can they possibly sell at $98,000? Now, I remember this friend was one of my fishing mentors, and in 1996, I remember he ordered a Ranger 487 with a 150 on the back because a 150 was the bass horsepower limit, and it cost $31,000. And I said, man, who can afford $31,000? So is $98,000, is that the modern day 31, or have we just experienced that exponential growth to the point of it being completely unrealistic at this point? But it's astounding to me.
yeah. So we'll go down the bass boat rabbit hole real quick. I actually had a Team Skeeter deal. Um, and I bought a ZX 225, brand new, 2006 model in 2006. Best electronics you could get. Had four tracks on it. And the best electronics then was an X15 Lowrance with GPS link on it. Um, and the price tag that I've made payments on, the total was like 41.5. Go find another 20-foot bass boat with a 225 on it, rigged out for 41.5 right now. You can't do it.
No, you can't. But what is that? Like, strip away the electronics, because like my 1999 boat, I look at it, it had two Lowrance X75s on it. They were 4-inch black and white screens, no GPS, and that was kind of state of the art at that point. So it's not exactly apples to apples, but if you just put the hull and a basic trolling motor and an outboard on it right now, like are we matching inflation, or have we far outstripped it at this
I
point?
think we have, in my opinion, we have found out that, hey, if you can get these payments down to $300-400, it doesn't matter what the price tag you put on it. I'll be honest here, Pete. When I bought that boat, it was on a 10-year loan. I sold it after 6 years, and to be honest with you, I didn't lose a dollar. Now, I made some balloon payments on that, and I was smart. But I sold it because I had no job at the time. Being unemployed, you have to sell things sometimes. If I still had it, it had been paid off, and it was a great boat. Um, and I think that's why Vexus went after that under 40,000 market aluminum hybrid deal. They're great boats, but there are a lot of other good boats out there. But I really think a lot of it's the industry realizes guys, I hate to say this, they'll do a lot for 10% off and to wear a jersey. And they know if this guy's willing to do that for a jersey and a pack of worms, he's willing to sign his life away for 15, 20, 30 years on a boat. So that $70,000 boat and $450 or $600 payments don't sound bad until after interest and you pay the full length of the loan, you've spent $120,000, $140,000 on a boat.
The whole jersey thing, and we could talk about that for hours, is just amazing to me. That guys literally for that 10% discount will go work 27 boat shows, wear a patch, do this, do that, and everyone's still making money on them. So, I mean, there's no great loss to the company. It's a free labor source, but it's the most bizarre aspect of this industry. And like I said, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole because I think we could talk about it for 10 hours.
Yeah. Especially our buddy old JoJo. Shout out to JoJo Norwood if you're listening to this. I have got to get him on here, but I'm pretty sure we would violate some FCC laws or whatever it is.
I think you would have to get subtitles too to understand exactly what was going on. For those of you who don't know JoJo Norwood, he is the king of Facebook. And I don't know how he does it. He must have like an ankle bracelet that shocks him because you post something on Facebook and 8 seconds later, there's a comment from JoJo in South Carolina Ease commenting and explaining something about what you just posted. And usually it has a reference to pickled eggs. It might have a politically incorrect statement as well. So I'm kind of careful about which comments I allow.
Yeah, I've had he'll comment on some of my wife's stuff and her friends will be like, who the hell is that JoJo guy? And she's like, oh, he's a sweetheart. But
JoJo, I'll tell you a good story about JoJo because there's plenty of bad to go around.
I hope he gets 1 million friend requests after this too.
He knows that I miss the Classic Expo every year, and I love the Classic Expo. Like, I love nothing more than fishing tackle and going around and looking at all the new crap and hopefully buying a bunch of it. And so at the last time the Classic was at Hartwell, he actually went around the expo and put together a goodie bag for me and delivered it to my hotel.
That's amazing. I think he's a good-hearted dude, 100%.
Yeah, I think so. That's right. Let's not too much on JoJo, man. This is about me.
Yeah, this is about Pete. So I got to answer your question about David Deli because we flew off on bass boats. So I met David. I respect him. He's an awesome fisherman. He is kind of like out there, though. He's always outside the box, and that goes with his fishing and philosophies and everything. And I left a comment on that video, and I said, tournament bass fishermen have killed more bass than a Ned rig. Example, Kentucky Lake Triton Owners Tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, when you put stuff out there and you say, well, these are my assumptions based on my experience, not everybody hooks a fish in the throat with a Ned rig. And I read this post on a Facebook forum, and I agreed with it. Guy said, well, you got to think a lot of these pros aren't 100% dedicated finesse fishermen. They may not be using the perfect setups and this and that. And maybe they're just not feeling these fish bite a Ned rig, or they're waiting to feel a tug. And a lot of times that bite on a Ned is not a thump or a peck. It's just a difference in the feel of the line and waiting too long to set the hook. I don't know, but I thought, man, if that's one you're going to base on, man, the amount of fish that just been killed by a 10-inch power worm is pretty high up there as well.
Yeah, or a wacky rig or anything along those lines, you know. And the argument seemed to assume that everyone was out fishing a Ned rig, that every fish caught on a Ned rig was going to die, etc., which seemed to be pretty far-fetched to me.
Yeah, but you know what? I think at the time he only had like 15 or 16,000 subscribers. Now he's got 20,000. That video got shared around a lot. But you know what? I'll give it to him. That's a out-of-the-box topic. Nobody else had done it. And kudos to that. I wish I could think of something like that. I just try not to be that controversial. I'll be controversial. I'll tell you right now, Wigglewort sucks. I mean, you talk about get some people fighting mad. I made a little meme with I haven't posted yet with the guy. He's always on the conservative thing. Changed my mind. I put Spro rock crawlers just as good, if not better, than a Wigglewort. Changed my mind. I'll tell you right now, I think there's a lot of good options versus a Wigglewort. Not saying wiggleworts don't catch fish, because they do, but I'm not spending $40 on something when I can go pay $10.99 for a rock crawler or $9.99 for a 6-inch curve that pretty much does the same thing.
Isn't that crazy though to talk about those kind of numbers? Like, do you remember when a Terminator spinnerbait came out and it was $9.99 and people said we'd never spend it? And this is along the same lines as the Vexus thing. Granted, it's 20 years later, but like the idea of spending $11 on a crankbait like a 10XD and thinking that that's inexpensive has totally changed the metric there. And I think about it in terms of I haven't caught many fish on swim baits to date, but I've been really getting into Swimbait Culture lately and like reading all their forums and checking out the posts of dedicated swimbait guys. And it has me thinking, man, I should go out and spend $40 on this bait or $80 on this custom painted swim bait. I may never catch a fish on it, but they are so badass looking and so cool to watch. And the chance of catching the big double digit, the one or two that may live in my local lakes, is tempting. So granted, I have more money than I had 20 years ago, but it's changed it. The idea of going out, when it used to be, wow, I can get 10 bullet weights for $1.89. And then I remember the first time I went to Okeechobee and saw a 2-ounce bullet weight for $12.99. Like, what you're willing to spend, it's not, I don't know how to say this. It's not constant. As long as you're getting value for your money, that $12.99 crankbait may be worth a lot more than the $5.99 crankbait of years ago. And the $80 swim bait, to someone, it's worth a lot of money. To someone, there's value in doing that. Of course, I'm going to cry the first time it ends up in a brush pile and I can't get it back.
But yeah, I remember when Lucky Craft first really come over the United States. The Sammy 100, the Pointer 128. And I'll tell you right now, those are two of the most influential baits that's been in the U.S. market, because then people saw Megabass, who had been around, and they saw them at $20. Thought, my God, I'm not paying $20 for a jerk bait. Then they used one and went, holy shit, this is good. And I've got a box full of them. Hell, I got a Megabass spinnerbait right here. It says $21.99 on it. Now, I didn't pay that because I got it from 4 of them from a buddy for a deal. But people will pay a good amount of money to catch fish. And if you've got a product that's head and shoulders above somebody else's, as far as the way it was made, the colors, the action, you can kind of get away with charging what you want to. I'll be honest, my good buddy Mike Book at Bullshad, years ago, people were like, I ain't paying $50 for swim bait. Dude, that is on the cheap now. But he makes a hell of a swim bait.
Yes, I was just down in Mexico. One of the guys in our group just absolutely crushed him on that bullshad. And he's a guy who's kind of ADD. So he tried to fish a glider down there for a day. He's like, man, this is just too slow. I'm not fishing this anymore. And he tied on the bullshad. And like, you see that sucker in the water, it's an awesome looking bait. And I know people bitch about the fact that it has sort of plain finishes, but I think that's actually, I mean, you ever seen like a gizzard shad on Kentucky Lake? They're all missing scales and they have sores and stuff
they look like shit.
They look like shit. And I think that's why, people complain, I'm spending $50. I'm not getting a prime paint job, but that's kind of the deal, I think. I was going to show you, I just pulled these 2 baits off the shelf. This is how sick I am. This is the Roman made. This is the Lunker Punker. I got them for free, but I'm afraid to throw them. I'm afraid to throw this big Roman made, because I'm sure my 25-pound fluorocarbon is going to snap the first time I throw it and I'm going to cry. But it's really kind of dumb to have a bait sitting on the shelf. It's like having a car and just keeping it in the garage. What good is it doing you at that point? I'm never going to sell this sucker, but I'm afraid to fish it. And I, talking to those guys like Palaniuk and Jochimson and Steve Kennedy, they're all like, man, that's the bait. And then I know Palaniuk has a new one out that's apparently pretty awesome from everything I've heard. But
yeah,
I wouldn't
I've got
even
one of them hanging behind my head. It's pretty dadgum good for $34.99 on Tackle Warehouse.
Yeah, I mean, I have to go and buy some of those to throw it, but I don't even know what I'm looking for. That's the problem. Like, if you know that this Roman made is the standard bearer and you go out and throw it, you can say at least, well, if I can get Palaniuk's bait to do exactly the same thing or something similar, then I'm doing the right stuff. But there's so many cool baits out there. It's like I went to Japan in 2007 and I spent $800 because I didn't know what I was looking for. And I think if I went now, I might spend $8,000 because there's so much cool stuff over there that I want to buy. I think like you, I'm a tackle junkie. I have more stuff than I can ever possibly use. I still probably catch more fish on a green pumpkin Senko than anything else.
I can
But
tell you after all the data I've compiled, and I've been working on this project, and I've been busy at work and other things. Um, I compiled this. I took all the top 10 baits from FLW and Bass. By far, without a doubt, if you want to cash a check, make a top 10, just get good with the green pumpkin Cinco or some kind of
and
green pumpkin stick bait. You will make top 10s.
yeah, I mean, we've been talking about David Dudley, Porosnik, guys like that. They go out with a wacky rig and they catch fish everywhere. I kind of feel bad that I kind of picked on David. I'm going to give him a little love. I saw a video he did a few years ago for FLW. We were saying, well, you need 3 strands of milfoil, not 4. You need this amount of sand on the bottom. And he was like, this is all crap. We way overthink these things. Go out with the common baits, the baits that work, and that's when you catch them. But at the same time, I will say there's some fun for guys like you and me who've been doing this a long time and may not be great fishermen. You popped your cherry on a lot of different baits a long time ago. You caught your first Carolina rig fish 30 years ago. You caught your first 10XD fish 10 years ago. Like, going out and catching some fish on something new is badass. After watching Zaldane all last year catch him on that mag draft, I went and I threw it a bunch in December, and I finally caught 3 2-pounders on it. And they were the 3 most exciting fish of my year because, like,
Yeah.
it opened that big bait window. And then this past week, I was at El Salto. As you can see, I haven't shaved because I haven't been at work in a week.
I just don't shave anymore, bud.
I threw that Spro Rat a bunch, and I got some unbelievable strikes. And I never caught a real big one on it, and I probably threw it more than I should. But it's kind of addictive to go out there and throw something that you've never gotten a bite on before. You've never even gotten a bite on something in that category, and you go out and do it. And that's what pro fishing means to most of us. I mean, most of us are fans of the guys who are out there, but we're also participants in the sport. And when they open a window for you like that to see how you can use a rat or see how you can use a glide bait, it's pretty damn exciting.
Yeah, I remember the college tournament where the guys were skipping that rat. People had never seen that. And I'm talking to a couple of my good buddies, Jake Lawrence and Randall Morris. They were there at Bethel actually fishing that tournament. They're like, yeah, we known about that for a long time. We knew that's how that deal would be won. I'm like, dude, y'all been holding out on me. No, yeah, it'll work on Kentucky Lake, but it's a really small window. I'm like, huh.
How many of those little windows do you think there are? Like when they went to Tennessee and there was that Demiki rig deal, or you go to Cumberland and there's a pink spinnerbait deal for 2 weeks, or Clear Lake and there's the hitch. Like, how does everyone get clued in on that immediately? Like, everyone knows about it except me, it feels like all the time.
Yeah, honestly, I think I'm not calling nobody out, but I think a lot of information gets exchanged. And that doesn't mean it's private information. Dude, you can find out anything you want to about any lake at any time that's public on social media. You don't have to comment on it, but,
Right.
guys go, well, I'm going to Kentucky Lake this weekend, got a tournament. Dude, you can figure out what you need to be throwing real quick. But it's weird that, I'll be honest, there's still a 10XD window here on Kentucky Lake. Granted, when it first came out, dude, it's the most badass way to fish. Second to when the Magnum Spoon came out I'd ever seen. I mean,
Right.
my fishing partner, I consider one of the best crankbait fishermen up here. He said, watch this. He ties that sucker on and he makes about 6 cranks. And there's one. He said, it's a great big one. And it was 2. And it was like that for 20, 30 minutes. And it stayed like that for a month because guys go, I ain't paying $12 for a crankbait to lose it. But he's like, I want as many as I can get because we're going to break a bunch of them off.
I need you to come down to Mexico with me. I've done the 10XD there, but I've brought spoons down and I don't know how to fish them. And I'm sure that bite is on at times because it's not just tilapia that they eat. It's, big gizzard shad too, and a fish called mohara. And I think they look just like that spoon. So I need someone to show me that bite and really dial it in.
So here's my spoon story. Of course, I've got to be really good friends with Ben Parker, and Ben's pretty much doesn't fish anymore. He does the duck hunting. It's all your deal. I'll give you a little plug. Check out Parker's Outfitting on Instagram. But his duck hunting business is huge now. But when he come out with the spoon, the story is he's seen this big giant gizzard shad just skip across the water, and all of a sudden, And he thought, golly, he said, I was catching them on the Lake Fork spoon. He said, what if I could get a spoon that size? And he got with Brooks and a couple other guys and had a couple made. Brooks is at Nichols. And he said, the first day I went out there, pulled up on a spot, got a few fish biting through that spoon. And he said, it's like they'd never, ever seen it. And so he gave a few to some select guys around the lake. And long story short, one of them actually landed in my fishing partner's boat. And they were fishing, him and another guy were fishing a tournament. And they had like 21 pounds, a pretty good sack. My partner said, hey, Bob, why don't you throw that freaking spoon that you got? Let's see if that thing really works. So he tied it on a flipping stick with some P line, throws it out there before it hits the bottom. He said, get the net, 6-pounder. For 5 minutes, they culled everything they had, ended up having about 25 pounds. And I always told Ben, I said, what if you would have limited that to 10 to 15 guys on Kentucky Lake? There's no telling how much money that could have been won by those guys. But the thing about it is people see it throwing. It's like a dang hubcap out there, just flashing and all. But it would be deadly in Mexico.
Yeah, you got to come down and do it. When you think about it, like mentioning Ben Parker, are like the 3 stages of that spoon, is it Kelly Jordan publicizing it, through, what was it, Ultimate Match Fishing?
Yep, on Kentucky Lake.
And Ben Parker and James Watson doing it with MLF. Is that like the three like mega moments in the spoon's history in terms of getting it out there to the world?
Yeah, I would say, and a lot of people don't realize this, but Kelly used that spoon in a Bassmaster tournament on Kentucky Lake. He made it top 10, and he was fishing right out in front of Kentucky Dam with that Lake Fork spoon. That's how I figured that deal out. And then the next year, he came back from match fishing, caught him out in front of Blood River on what I call the Kelly Jordan hole, and just crushed them. And guys, I mean, locally here and through the South TVA lakes, they figured that out, but they've been doing that on Fork for years. And just like everything else, they kind of come off of it. And the 10XD had come out. Swim baits were starting to be a player. And Ben rolls out with this big, giant 3-ounce thing. And when people saw Lambert and Clint Davis catch them on it, they had to have them. And for 2 or 3 years straight, that was one of the number one selling baits and tackle shops here from May to about July. And then the hair jig took over. KBD, hair jig, old school bait that made a big time comeback. So
can we back up? I don't mean to derail the conversation.
No, you derail all you want to, buddy.
We're both pretty tight with Kelly Jordan. I mean, I've worked with Kelly. I wrote On Tour with Lucky Craft for Bass Fan back in 2006. So I've known him since then, worked with him at the PAA and at Bass and everything else. And I know you're pretty tight with Kelly and have been for a long time. Like, how they had that reconnaissance with Matthew McConaughey? When are we going to see the Jordanissance? Like, and I don't mean to put him down. I know his life has changed. He has a family now. He has other responsibilities. But when I first got into it, maybe I had stars in my eyes. I thought Kelly was going to be the next Van Dam, except with big fish power. He caught so many big fish at BASS events.
I mean, that's his nickname, is Big Fish.
Big Fish. I mean, and he still cashes checks, but he's not the Van Dam. And maybe that's an unfair standard to hold someone to. But like, is Kelly due for a rebirth in his career at some point where he becomes a consistent top 10 guy?
I thought it was going to happen a few years ago. He tripped on a boat dock, I believe, broke his wrist, and got a year exemption off. And he come back in the first tournament or two, he made a top 10 or top 20. He made another one, and I thought, man, he's gonna do good. And he just kind of petered off there. I like Kelly, and I got to get him on a podcast. And I have learned a ton about fishing for big fish and offshore structure from him. And he's actually one of the best grass fishermen out there. And I think he's the best sight fisherman. If you ask anybody on MLF or Bassmaster that fished with him, say, who's the best sight fisherman? 90% of people will say Kelly Jordan. They won't say Shaw Grigsby. No offense to Shaw. He's great. Or Rojas or all these. They'll say Kelly Jordan. His eyesight's unbelievable.
Yeah, he can do it all. I mean, he can do, like you said, he can do that. He won here at the Potomac flipping. He can do the offshore stuff. There's nothing he can't do. Plus, You know as well as I do, there are certain guys who just have that sort of big fish mojo, and he's caught millions of them at Lake Fork over the years. But he's a guy who can go to Winya Bay or whatever, and he'll catch the biggest fish. He just has that mojo going. And so when he gets on that little roll and everyone's catching 3-pounders and he catches all 3-pounders plus 1/6 a day, he's due for a win. It's baffled me, and I don't know him well enough to really ask him what's the deal, but it's baffled me why he's not been a consistent top 10 superstar. Having spent a day or two in the boat with him and certainly watched hundreds of hours of footage of him, I always expect him to do that.
I think some of it might be the lakes they were going to just didn't set up well because if he always did good at Guntersville. The last time he was really in contention to win, I think, on bass was a Guntersville tournament because he can find them there on beds when a lot of guys can't. Now, of course, they're fishing the Bass Pro Tour. Going to go Fork in March. Chances are there's going to be some side fish around. If anybody catches them, it will be him. But if there's offshore fish there, he can find them. So that's a good setup for him. But I can tell you, and as one of Kelly's friends, we've had many conversations. He's not going to catch them up north where there's a bunch of 1.5 pound, 2 to 3 pound fish, because he does fish for those big bites. And he's told me, he said, "Hey, I know it's MLF, and everybody's got the conception we're all fishing for dinks. I'm still trying to catch the biggest fish in the lake. Granted, I've got to catch them. If I can catch what I think's enough to keep me in the top 40 or top 20, I'm going to go try to catch a big one. And one of these days," he said, "it's going to happen." At Lake Jordan, the first day at Lake Jordan, he had 100 pounds. Well, you look at the average size fish, he was killing everybody. He was 4 and 6 pounders left and right. He didn't have a bunch of 2s and 3s. But I think a little bit's the tournaments, and Kelly's a big family guy, and I think a lot of it's he might be just a little burnt out, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing wrong. That Lake Fork tournament you brought up is an interesting test of MLF style strategy, though. Like if you find a 10-pounder on the bed, how long do you sit on it for at that tournament? I mean, when someone else can go out and catch 5 2-pounders in that same amount of time, there's a strategy element. And I think that's what we really haven't explored with BPT. And I admittedly don't follow it as closely as some others. But what's the strategy in terms of making long runs or sitting on a bed fish for a long period of time or following an oddball pattern that may pay off? What can you do, and how do you sort of buck the tide or go with the tide in order to maximize your success?
That's what the average guy that's complaining on Facebook doesn't realize, that there's a lot more decision making over there versus, hey, I'm just going to buckle down here on Wilson Lake, and I'm going to lay on this jerk bait all day to get my 5 bites. And if I do, I'll have 25 pounds. You can do that. Over on MLF, if you just say, I'm just going to throw this all day and fish for 5 bites, you're not guaranteed you're going to even be in the top 20 or 30. Totally different strategy. I think that's why Kelly bought a Bass Cat, so he can get around a little bit faster.
I think it's like a midlife crisis. Kelly and I are about the same age. I'm about to turn 50 next month, believe it or not. And some guys go out and they get a sports car. I think Kelly just wanted to have an 80-mile-an-hour boat.
Yeah, I remember I had to go fetch his boat for him when I worked for Mike Otten. It's the middle of a Bassmaster tournament. My phone goes off. It says Kelly Jordan. I'm like, what the hell? This has got to be a butt dial. He said, "Hey, man, I've already called Trip and whatnot. I'm stranded. I've got to go. I'm taking my fish, putting it in so-and-so's boat. I'm going the way, and my boat's floating out in front of so-and-so. You know exactly where it is. Would you go get it for me?" I'm like, "Oh, okay." We blew the motor. Dude weighed in like a 24-pound bag. So that Skeeter, great boats. They ride good, but it's definitely not as fast as a Bass Cat. But he always had a pretty fast Skeeter. I remember trying to chase him down on Lake Fork in a second camera boat, and you weren't doing that. But let's talk about that swim bait thing again, because I know you're getting into it, and I get a lot of guys that from the swim bait universe on there. What is it about the swim bait underground movement that's different than guys pouring soft plastics or guys building jigs and spinner baits? Is it because people put so much time and effort into it, or there's a lot of really unique options and out there? It's different. You know, you can only watch a guy pour plastic worms so much where you're like, okay, but dude, some of the stuff these guys are making it's high dollar, but I want to buy it because I know it's really quality work. And I think a lot of it's that if I throw this enough, I am going to catch a Jane on
it. Yeah. And it's also like you're not quite as old as me, but you think back to like the 90s, you'd go to the tackle show in January and you'd see all the new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen anymore. Between iCast and the Classic and Tackle Warehouse, how often do you walk into a bait shop and see something that you've never seen before? Almost never. I mean, I remember like the first time I went to Northern Bass Supply in New Hampshire, which was a little shop that no longer exists, seeing all that sort of northern weird stuff, gets its and things like that. I was like, man, this is cool. But now you've seen it all.
Mm-hmm.
But the swim bait stuff, unless you're on those forums or unless you know a guy who knows a guy and you know the secret handshake, there are bait like I see these names and I've never heard of them before. And I don't know if they're good, bad, or indifferent, but I'm like, man, that's the secret shit. I got to get some of that. And I don't know. And then like, last year at the Classic at Tennessee, I don't know if you saw the footage, but I was on Cliff Perch and Adrian Avina. I think it was the first day. And they were sharing this little bridge. It was like 30 yards long. And you could tell they were not happy with each other. And Avina was throwing little stuff like a jig and a crankbait, and Perch did some of that. But he was also throwing this swim bait, and he wouldn't tell us what it was. I'm like, what is it? He said, I don't know. It's something I bought at a store somewhere. But who makes it? What brand is it? Oh, I'm not really sure. Like he wouldn't tell me. And I went and did all the backside research and found out that it was this HPH swim bait, which is made, I think, down in the Atlanta area.
Yeah, high powered herring, I believe they call it.
Yeah. And I was like, man, like you had to do the hunt, kind of like you had to do with the Vision 110 in the old days. You'd see someone throwing it or the pointer, and they'd say, oh, I'm just throwing a Strike King Diamond Minnow or whatever, or a Rogue. And you knew they weren't.
Kind of like George Cochran did at Gunnersville.
I wasn't going to call him out because he gets a little pissy if you call him out on things. But yeah, I mean, like there are very few secrets. You look every moment of tournament coverage now, whether it's BPT or Bassmaster, every usable moment is filmed. You can't keep secrets as well anymore. So when there are secrets out there and you have to ferret out what the secret sauce is, that's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, so Seth Fighter experienced a little bit about that this year. Now, in Seth's defense, he did catch fish on a DT6. I mean, I saw that on video, or DT10. But he whacked their ass on an OSP Blitz Max. And from all accounts from other fishermen, I'm not going to mention their names, they're sponsored by other people. Those Blitz baits are the deal. Their jerk bait and that crankbait is unreal.
I bought the OSP, I think it's called the HP or something like that. It's a little flat-sided bait years ago, and I haven't caught crap on it. It's one of the best-looking crankbaits I've ever bought. But yeah, I mean, when you hear about like the Evergreen stuff or the Imakatsu stuff or OSP, brands that aren't Megabass and aren't Duo or aren't Lucky Craft, it's sort of the same feeling. Like I've been into that JDM tackle for a long time, and I don't know a whole lot about it, but I own a lot of it because you're like, man, it's that magic bait theory. You know as well as I do on Kentucky Lake, the guys who win for the most part are the guys who have spots dialed in. They know when the current's going to turn on and how to be set up. And it doesn't matter whether they have a drop shot or a football jig or a crankbait or all of them. But no matter how much you fish, you always believe that there's some magic bait out there. If I just get this one custom painted bait or I get this rate of fall 12, I'm going to wear them out and no one else is going to catch a damn fish. That I can't get away from it. I've written a million articles about swim jigs, and you know what every pro says? I throw a white swim jig, I throw a green pumpkin swim jig, and I throw a black and blue swim jig. Yet I'm always still looking for like that Potomac crab or clear fish or something a little different that's going to give me a little edge. And maybe that's because I'm not a great fisherman, that I want to go out there and have the stuff that'll give me that little edge. But man, the edge is about understanding how fish live, not presenting them a better French fry.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, I'm a guy that I like a little purple in my stuff. I like a little purple in my crankbaits and my swim jigs and in my spinner baits. To be honest, I'm just throwing a variation of white. That's all it is. Or at times, maybe it's just a variation of white and chartreuse. But to me, I've always said, man, I've done good on it. Why stop?
Right.
And is chartreuse and purple really going to get you more bites than chartreuse and blue or black? No, probably not. you'll probably catch the same amount of fish, but if you get around them, you're going to feel like it is. You know what I mean? Like, man, I'm whacking them on this. I do think there are times, though, that maybe due to watercolor or what they're feeding on, it just gives them a different flash they're not used to. But I agree with you. I think being around fish and knowing when they're feeding, when they're not, when to fish on top of a ledge and when to fish down the sides makes more difference than I got this bait custom painted by Big John's, double customs. I don't think that matters that much. But those custom painter guys, don't tell them that. Boy, that will ream your ass all day.
Hey, speaking of good-looking baits versus ugly baits, I want to talk about another friend of ours who I know you're real close with.
Sure.
Mark Menendez, St. John's River is coming up. Did he throw possibly the ugliest spinnerbait in history last year with that little piece of yellow worm on the hook shank? And
yeah, it's ugly. And actually, this podcast is supposed to be Mark's podcast. Oh, my headset's going down. Can you still hear me, Pete?
I can.
Okay, all right. I'll edit that out. Actually, we're not going to edit out because this is Baitman Raw. But he told me he's bringing that piece of junk to the first tournament. I asked him, I said, Mark, you going to throw that junky ass spinnerbait? He said, well, yeah, it catches them. Mark's a pretty good bait dude, too.
Everyone has seen that spinnerbait now, so there'll probably be 82 other guys with it.
Mark's a great spinnerbait fisherman. He caught that fish. It was Ray Roberts, the 13-pounder, on an Oldham spinnerbait back in the day. That was a giant.
You want to hear something messed up now that you mentioned that? First of all, do you remember the color of that Oldham spinnerbait?
No.
It was cantaloupe.
Cantaloupe, yeah.
But so anyway, I've been going down to Mexico for years, and
that's all they throw down there is Oldham spinnerbaits.
So my buddy who had never been came down this week, and he had been reading all of this stuff, and he ordered a bunch of spinnerbaits from Terry Oldham this week. And I'll send you some pictures after this. I caught some megas on it out deep, just slow rolling it in like 28 feet of water. And then we were headed back on the plane yesterday, and I saw a guy wearing an El Salto shirt from another lodge, and I thought it was Steve Parks, the inventor of the Rage Tail, who goes down there a lot. And then Hannah kept saying, no, it's not Steve Parks. I saw the name on his shirt, and it wasn't him. And as we walked by his luggage, it was Terry Oldham. So I would have liked to have stopped and talked to him and asked him about spinnerbait stuff and pick his brain like some geeky fanboy, but I didn't get quite the chance. But maybe now on the next trip, I'll know who he is if I see him in the airport.
He also makes the Oldham's flipping jig, the original jig with the screw lock on it.
Right.
And rumor has it that it was always the base model for the Hack Attack jig. I actually asked Hack face to face on a Facebook Live one time, and he said no, but I know better.
I think it is, because I've heard the stories from those guys who are associated with Strike King, like the Phil Marks, Tim Renault, and that group back in the day. Did you ever hear about flipping the scrapes at Rayburn and Toledo Bend under the grass canopies, where they would literally have like 4 rods with 1-ounce jigs on them, and you would flip a fish out of the grass, throw them in the bottom of the boat, and try to get another jig in there as soon as you can to keep the school fired up. And I'm pretty sure the old jig was the deal for that, and that was back, I guess, in the late 90s.
Yeah, so Terry Oldham, I mean, you talk about baits that are forgotten. That's one. But let's talk about baits that didn't work. I've got sucked into a few of those through the years. And I'll tell you right now, I caught fish on the flying lure. And I think if a man wanted to use it in the right spot right now, he could crush them. I bought some helicopter lures, but I don't really mean infomercial lures. I mean, shit you look at and go, there's no way that can't catch a fish, and you throw it, and you throw it, and you throw it.
I'll tell you one. When I first got into tournament fishing, or when I was in a few years, I was fishing a tournament at Bugs Island, and I was told, do you remember the Madman Craw?
Yes.
And that was supposedly the big deal, and they were hard to get, and a friend FedExed us a box, like $100 worth of them, and I never caught a damn fish on that thing.
I'm guilty on that one, too. You know what's crazy is the revolution of the 3D craw right now. You've got Savage Gear has a 3D craw. This other company, Chase Baits, has a really realistic craw. Probably shows up on your Facebook ads, and it probably will after this podcast airs because of Big Brother. And then there's a company called Tackle HD that's doing a really good one that you just rig it on a football head. And I've got some of those and actually caught a few fish on them, but it's weird how the industry will always kind of go back in time to get new ideas too.
But you know what? Like, you remember the old Guido bug, and Dion, as a high school project, had supposedly molded it out of a real crawdad. So
Yeah,
that's kind of the only example I can think of a super realistic craw that's worked. I mean, the Rage Craw doesn't look that real. The speed, I don't think there's any bait out there other than a Senko that has caught more fish than a speed craw, maybe a brush hog. Speed craw, it looks like a craw, but it's not like hyper natural. It's just the way it acts in the water.
hmm I'll be honest. Freaking pack of crawl has slayed so many fish, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like a hybrid tube with craw flaps on there. If you think about it, uh,
Yeah. And going back to Kelly Jordan, I mean, Kelly was the one, at least
the
to
craw
my way,
tube.
the craw tube. I mean, he killed him on that thing, that Lake Fork craw tube. It's what he won here on the Potomac with that and the kicker craw from Kickerfish Baits.
So there's a company you haven't heard about in a long time. I know Clark Ream was throwing a lot of their stuff at one time. Uh, it's this whole tackle world's is crazy. But you got a lot of unique companies out there. I mean, obviously I'm associated with 6 Cents. They've got some great stuff. And if I need to get a care package out your way, Pete, I think we can do that. Um, but Missile Baits is another one. I'll give them a nice little plug. John Cruz has done an excellent job of what he puts out. It's pretty original. You know, everybody's getting on the Ned train and whatnot. That Ned bomb's a really good bait. And the D bomb is
You know,
amazing.
a really important point that comes out of that. You mentioned brands like Missile Baits or 6 Cents, or I think of Dobbins Rods or Phoenix Boats.
Yeah,
Did anyone really think we needed another soft plastics company, another boat company, another rod company? I mean, those markets are flooded, but it's exciting that if you come in with the right backing and the right product and the right approach, you can still make a dent in this industry. I mean,
absolutely.
it feels like we're totally saturated. And for companies that are sitting on their asses doing nothing, maybe they are. Maybe they're not going to grow or they're going to die off. But if you really have sort of a little bit of gumption here, you can make something of yourself in short order.
Yeah. And I'll be honest. You look at Reaction Innovations, they made their bread and butter over the most do nothing flipping bait ever. A beaver does nothing when it hits the bottom. And when it's falling, it's not flapping and doing a lot of stuff, but god dang, you can catch a fish on that thing. I mean, I've still got piles of them. Now they got the spicy beaver with the flanges on it, and that's a badass bait. Great for swim jigs. You put it on the back of a football jig. But they're a company that they don't seem to come out with a lot of stuff, but when they do, you know, it's been tested pretty thoroughly and it's going to catch some fish.
And not a lot of advertising either. You know,
No.
that's the most amazing story to me is Kitech. Because as far as I know, they don't have any national pro staff. They don't really do any advertising. Yet every pro's boat I get into, they have that Fat Swimmer 4.8, 3.8 in their boat ready to go. Even if their sponsor produces something that's exactly the same. Kind of like the Senko in that respect.
Yeah. I mean, now you've got rage swimmers, you got pro swimmers, whatever. They're all basically a Kitech. And I'd always heard, and I don't know if this is true, but I heard they basically there's a small company in Japan and they basically, I won't say copied, they took their ideas and they had more backing and they put it out to the US market. And that wasn't 100% original deal. Do I care? Probably not. But it's amazing. What really helped that bait was the Alabama rig.
Yeah.
You can say what you want about a Senko, it's caught tons of fish. But we'll talk about baits that really changed the industry. Alabama rig made a guy spend $40 at one time for one bait. And that's because he had to get the heads, he had to get 2 packs of baits, he had to get a rig, he may have to get line. Hell, he may have to get a new rod and reel. That's $150 to go catch a fish. I'd never had seen anything like that for a while, you know, back when I was in the retail days when that Alabama rig took hold. And then guys figured out.
It's also a bullshit stopper because for years we've been saying, oh, those fish get out in cold weather and they suspend and no one can catch them. Well, Paul Elias showed that he could catch 100 pounds when other people were catching, 6 pounds a day. So every time one of these pros shows us a new technique or a new bait or something else, it sort of takes away your excuse of, well, there's a cold front. Well, they just won't bite. They'll always bite. I have a friend whose motto is some asshole always catches them. Because no matter how tough the conditions are, someone's always going to take home the big check. Someone always comes in with a big bag, and that sort of depletes your excuses right there.
Yeah. And 2 weeks later, Dan Moorhead won 100 grand and ever start championship on Kentucky Lake. So it wasn't just like he just got on a Gunnersville school. Hell, it worked at Kentucky Lake, and it was unreal the first 2 years. You could go out in November to January when maybe just crappie guys were out. You just roll up to a point with some current on it and just whack them. But my point was that, that made the Kitech famous. Then guys started figuring out, well, you can put it on a single swim bait head fishing in the summer. You can use it on a ball head, finesse swim bait. Finesse swim baiting's huge now.
Right.
I mean, you got Scottsboro Tackle makes a small one. There's a lot of companies making these small swim baits. Big Bite Baits makes a good suicide shad, and even the custom porter guys are now going, well, I've always made a 7-inch. Let's now make a 3 or 4-inch for these guys in the pre-spawn and winter months. And it's become a huge tool to the guys on all the tours as well.
Yeah, like I said, every boat I get in has it on. There's something to be said for that. Nothing looks more like a minnow. Nothing will attract every size of fish out there, and that's what you need if you're going to catch checks every day. The old days of being able to catch 12 pounds a day and get a check are over. Now you need 17, 18 pounds consistently to get a check, but you still need to fill out a limit every day. And having 3 5-pounders doesn't do you any good if you don't add those 2 2-pounders to the bag.
Let's while we're talking about catching fish in tournaments, we got to talk about the Catalina wine mixer. It's coming up, the Bassmaster Classic. Whether you're a fan of bass or not, you got to admit, growing up a fan of the sport, the ultimate tournament was the Bassmaster Classic. It's at Gunnersville. It's going to be a big fish lake. Who are some guys you want to look for to do well on that, and what kind of techniques you think you're going to see guys doing? Is it going to be the vintage jerk and crank and trap, or are you going to see some big swim baits and maybe something we haven't seen, bladed jig, big bladed jig?
I think you're going to see a mix of those things. I mean, if everything sets up right, you're going to see big bags, and you're going to see them caught a number of different ways. That early March is a weird time period down there. Fish are starting to move up, but a big cold front can set them back quite a bit. We talked about the bull shad earlier. I remember at the 2014 Classic down there, went to Mark's Outdoors. I think the bull shad peg was sold out, and I counted at least 6 or 7 boats that had it on the deck in that tournament. I would love to see it won on a swim bait. I mean, to me, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a geek or because I'm just getting into this now, but that would be something different.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, whoever wins it and wins $300,000, he doesn't care if he catches them on a Ned rig, Damiki rig, swim bait, whatever. But for me, it adds to the story. When someone catches them on a little brown jig, it's not near, or Senko, it's not nearly as exciting to me as it is to the manufacturers of those baits.
Yeah, absolutely.
We want to see something that opens a window. When Elias won at Gunnersville on the Alabama rig, that opened a window. It creates excitement. And Bass did a great job last year. They got a little lucky too. They went to these tournaments. Rick Clunn wins one. Lee Livesey has that amazing fish catch. Ott wins on his home waters. Just everything kept going right. And if this classic lives up to expectations, it will be a great, even though they'll have had 2 Elite Series tournaments under their belt already this year, it will be a great start to the year. And I've written a lot about it. There are only 3 Alabamians in the tournament, but there are 3 Canadians in the tournament. I mean, what happens if a Canadian wins this tournament or Seth Feider wins? And I posted something on Facebook the other day. I hope Seth wins, not necessarily because I care about Seth's career more than anyone else's, but man, it's going to be a hell of a party. I got to say, when nothing against Cliff Pace, but when he won, the party sucked. So,
Yeah.
I mean, Seth, it'll be an awesome party. There will be damage done, and that people will not be going home or going back to work the next day. I know I won't.
Yeah. I'm going to, obviously, I want some of my friends to do well, Mark Menendez, but guys, one of my friends, there was a little press on him. It's Clint Davis. He's won the Force Wood Cup. He can catch him at Gunnersville from his college career, and he's a Tennessee River stick. If you'll go look up how many checks and top 10s that dude's made on the Tennessee River, it'll blow your mind. And I think Clint, and this is, and he'll tell you, he was really discouraged, and he was going to quit fishing. So when he won that Forest Wood Cup, it lit a fire under his ass, and Then he went back to bass and had a great year last year, qualified for the Classic, made several top tens. I would like to see Clint do really, really well. And but there's a lot of good fishermen in the Classic. I mean, you mentioned some Canadians. The Johnston brothers are great fishermen, great bladed jig fishermen. And
You know,
I'll be honest.
you bring up an interesting thing. Clint, you say he was about to quit, and then you win a big one, and you learn to win at that point. And we saw it a few years ago with Randy Howell. Randy Howell had never won a BASS event, and then he wins an Open, and then he wins a Classic, and then I think he won an Elite Series tournament after that, or an Angler of the Year championship, something like that. Like a guy like Chris Zaldain, who's come close so many times, including at Gunnersville. Does a Clint Davis have an advantage over him if they're heading into the last day on the same fish because Clint has already closed the door on a major championship? I don't know. It really comes down to the two personalities. But man, it's like a jar of pickles. Getting that first one out is the hard one, and then they open up, it seems, after that, and you can get all the pickles out. You need that first win to be able to get on to the next one and the next one after that.
Yeah. In Gunnersville, it's Tennessee River, there could be somebody just sitting back in the shadows that I don't even know about fishing this class, and that just comes in and pulls like a Terry McWilliams did the year Duckett won. And has an awesome 4 days. And Terry was really close to winning that Classic. But anything can happen. It's the 50th year anniversary of the Bassmaster Classic. The Super Bowl is only 54 years old. So we've been around for a while. When are we ever going to get that recognition?
Do you think the circuits care about who wins? Like, do you think they prefer a Zaldain versus a Canterbury versus Todd Auten winning? Or do you think they just want someone who will go out and represent right and win in the right way?
Yes and no. And this is no offense to any angler that has a laid back personality, that's not very outgoing, that I just want to fish and doesn't do a lot of sponsor stuff. And that's okay. And I'm making nothing against this person. Steve Kennedy is a great example. The guys that follow Kennedy know he is one of the top 10 fishermen on this planet. Because Steve ain't going to do a whole lot of craziness on social media, or he ain't wearing a jersey. If he does, it's his Bass Cat Auburn Tigers on it. Man, I think he could pull it off, but there's some guys out there that they're just not very marketable. Let's be honest. And that's nothing against them because they're great fishermen. And that's their deal. They catch fish. They don't try to catch sponsors. And then there's some guys that are really good at both. You
have the right. I mean, when you win, you qualify, you win. Cliff Pace, I use as the example. He just didn't want to do a lot with it. He didn't want to work with Bass heavily on the media side of things. And you got the trophy in your house. That's your prerogative at that point, I suppose. But as a fan and as someone who's sort of quasi in the industry, I want someone who's going to do a lot with the title.
Yeah, I think Fighter would be a guy that he would do a lot with it. He does a lot for Daiwa and Rapala already. He wins the title. That dude's going to be there's going to be a mullet on every bait shelf corner. Since he likes to wear my buddy Matt Robertson's Onum hat, there will be lots of Onum hats sold, hopefully. But we're going to have to wrap it up, Pete. Is there anything we haven't covered you want to talk about?
No, I feel like I want to come back. I feel like I didn't generate enough controversy today, but I can work on that. And I would love to come back sometime and talk about travel. Since I sort of gave up on the tournament dream, so to speak, I've made it my passion to go to Brazil and Mexico and Alaska, and I'm heading to Guatemala next month. I would just love to talk at some point about traveling to those places and how the average bass angler can learn from that and just really enjoy seeing the rest of the world while we still have it.
Absolutely. So if you're interested in a trip to Mexico, that's my wife's car starting in the background. She's fixed to leave me because she's been wondering where I'm at. If you're interested in a trip to Mexico, Anglers and International, say, hey, I was listening to the Baitman podcast, Baitman Raw. Pete was on. I want to go. Who do we need to contact? Contact Hannah?
Contact Hannah, my wife. They don't let me do anything with bookings or with money or numbers or anything like that, but she will get you hooked up. Lady Angler at anglersin.com, or call her at 703-932-6299. You want to go to Lake El Salto, Lake Picachos, or the Amazon? We're headed back to El Salto in June. We're headed to the Amazon in December. I think we still have some space on our Amazon trip. If you haven't done that and you like to fish topwater, you need to do it. If you don't like to fish topwater, I don't want to be your friend.
Yeah, me either. Man, I've ran into people say, man, I hate throwing topwater. I'm like, that's just not American. So
Yeah, it's
but,
the best.
but Pete,
I
I'll
appreciate
tell
you
you what,
having
let's get this classic knocked out of the way and a few tournaments and maybe some controversy go through the next few months. And I'll have you back on.
That sounds great. Anytime you need anything, Kevin. For those of you who don't know, and you apparently do know because you're listening to it, Kevin's one of the good guys in the industry.
I try to be. Some people might disagree, but dude, I'll be honest, Pete. I do a lot of this for fun. I don't make a whole lot of money on YouTube or any of that stuff, but I enjoy talking to people, and I do enjoy helping people out. You know, I was blessed when I was growing up to be around Mark Menendez and Kelly Jordan and Mike Otten, and I'll be honest, Skeet Reese was always good as gold to me, and Gerald, and I just want to give back. If you don't know how to Texas rig a bait, by gosh, I'm going to show you how.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you, Kevin. I'm happy to help with anything I can anytime.
All right. Thank you so much, Pete. We are logging off Baitman Raw. Guys, if you haven't, make sure you subscribe to Podbean and this YouTube channel. And thanks again.